Welcome to the Directing Animation Livecast with Scott Weiser. Just 1 week before episode 23, when I unleashed 10 feature film pitches into the world, I partnered with Spacestation Animation as a director on exciting original projects. This will open up even more opportunities on this show to explore the art of directing animation and the pursuit of telling deeply meaningful stories. Today, my guest is someone you might recognize. In episode 2, I interviewed Jasmine Katatikarn and Mike Tenzio about their school, the Academy of Animated Art, and as it related to the online process of filmmaking and also online schooling, which I had done myself. So now we have Jasmine back. She has gone through quite a bit since we last chatted with her. When we last chatted with her, she was a lighter at Blue Sky Entertainment. As you know, Disney purchased Blue Sky, and then there were some layoffs. The whole studio closed, and Jasmine quickly transitioned into a CG lead at Framestore, I believe. And Jasmine not only is a job search warrior herself, she helps a lot of people know what they can do to break into the industry and how to survive this industry. And we're going to talk today about some cool trends coming into the industry. And I really feel like this episode is going to be very helpful to various people who either want to break into the industry or struggling to get back in or struggling just to survive the industry. So let's have a conversation. Welcome, Jasmine.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Scott. I'm happy to be back. Yeah, it seems like ages ago since
I know. Yeah, we're on episode, I believe, 26 right now, and I've almost lost track. But episode 27 was more than a year ago. So
wow.
No, episode number 7, yeah.
Nice.
So welcome back. How quickly and how was that transition from Blue Sky, you're laid off, to CG lead at Framestore?
Well, for me, there was really no transition time. I think I got a week off in between of the official.
Gotcha.
So yeah, for me, there was little transition time, but we did have mentally, like a mental space. We were given, at Blue Sky, probably a little bit over a month of when we were told to kind of prepare into our official end date. So mentally, I did get space to kind of, feel it out, get that I don't want to say closure, that feels odd, but to figure things out. And oddly enough, I hadn't planned on transitioning so quickly into a new role. It just happened to happen that way. Yeah, it's just like right, things don't go as planned, like your job being completely gone, but you roll with it and you make the best of it. So yeah, I'm excited to talk to you today about that.
Yeah, me too. And is this role different than lighting?
It's still lighting. It's different in the way that it's Blue Sky Studios is animation, feature animation, and Framestore is mainly visual effects. So it's effects versus animation world. But still, my specialty is in lighting.
Yeah, that's fascinating, though. What would you say are the biggest differences? Because, what I love lighting. I'm fascinated by lighting, but the most conversations about lighting I had were with my buddy Nick Noggle and with you. And that was mostly about feature film lighting. What's the difference with VFX lighting?
Yeah, I laugh because I have a lot to say about this, to be honest with you.
Oh, that's interesting.
I actually started my career in VFX. So before I went to Blue Sky, I was in the VFX world. And then I went to feature animation. And now I find myself back in VFX. It's kind of like a nice bookend thing. And to be honest with you, if you had asked me this question, maybe, when I was at Blue Sky, I would have said they're very similar. Not that much difference and whatnot. And realistically, now that I've made that transition back into VFX, because I was at Blue Sky doing animation, lighting for animation for over 10 years. So I realized I had forgotten a lot, to be honest. Not forgotten, but when you're not in it. And then when I came with a different perspective back into VFX, I was like, wow, this is it was a bigger difference than I remembered. And the biggest difference, and I use this analogy, I've used it with my students at the academy, and I've spoken to other people about this, is during my first week back in VFX, I was like kind of, getting back into the groove,
Yeah, yeah.
figuring it out. And all of a sudden I had this aha moment. I was like, wait a minute, VFX is like baking, and animation is cooking. So
Okay,
let me,
yeah,
let me go more into, I love these like analogies. So
yeah.
when you think of someone that loves to cook and someone that loves to bake, they're actually like very two different people, right? Like it's a
Yes.
mindsets,
Hmm.
and you don't think about it. But so the person, like for a cook, usually you kind of like you can throw things together, kind of like, oh, let me try this here and there,
Hmm.
and it could be like this masterpiece that you make. It's delicious, or it could be disastrous, but you're
Yeah.
kind of like free flowing.
Hmm.
But in baking, it's super precise, right? If
Yes.
you get one measurement off, it's there's something off. Like the whole thing could blow up,
Yeah.
and you might not know what it is. Like especially like when you taste it, it's like something's off, and then you realize you like missed this measurement's just like slightly off, and that's VFX. So like
Yeah.
what I realize is animation, since it's there's more creative liberty
Yeah.
in it,
Hmm.
cooking, right? You can like throw a different color light here and like see how it works. Put
Yeah.
a rim light that's not really supposed to be there, but you're trying to like cut out the character and tell the story. But VFX, you don't have that same flexibility because you're usually matching to a plate, like a live
Yeah.
action plate. So you need to be like super technical and accurate with it. You can't just throw in this random, ingredient because someone's gonna look at it and is like, well, that doesn't look right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's that different mentality. So now when my students come and ask me at the Academy of Animated Art, they're like, should I go into VFX or, animation? I'm always like, ooh, do you like to bake or do you like to cook? And I get like really, and they just look at
Yeah.
me, huh? And then I'm like,
Yeah.
look. So that's my explanation of the differences. Like, yes,
Yeah, and it's a really great
yeah.
explanation to me. My wife is a baker. She's a fantastic baker, and she's learned to cook. Since we've been married as well. And yeah, we talk about this all the time. Cooking happens more above the stove, and baking happens more in the stove. And yeah, baking is more about precision. It's more scientific, and cooking can be a bit more artistic. There is, obviously still artistic components to both of them, but yeah, it's a really, really good analogy, and I can relate to you started in VFX and then you went and worked for several years at Blue Sky. I also started as CG animator, and then as I was doing my freelance for several years, I did a lot of hand drawn and 2D, and I did some CG. But now that I've transitioned into a role as a director on a CG project at Space Station, yeah, there's been like that awakening of like, oh, I understand CG so much better than I did before, and it's really a cool skill set to have.
Yeah, I agree. And it's kind of nice because you realize you're always growing, right? Like with your
Yeah.
experiences, then you come back to something that I had done over 10 years ago with a different perspective and be like, ooh, I didn't notice that before.
Yeah.
It's nice.
That is nice. So let's talk about some cool trends that you're seeing in the industry. I know you
Mhm.
were excited about that in the email when you emailed me, that there were some cool trends that you really wanted to talk about that were exciting. I'm sure that it has to do with remote work a little bit because you mentioned that as well. But let's dive into that topic. See what your thoughts are on it.
I mean, trends in the industry. Well, one thing I'll say, the really good thing about our industry is we found during the pandemic, not only can we still survive, but we can thrive,
Yeah.
you know, remotely, which, I was very grateful for. It was also when you saw all these other industries or careers that you realize are paralyzed, right, from
Yeah.
the pandemic. But for us, it was really great, and the thing that I think that changed the most is it also allowed the remote, right? It kind of allowed this openness and flexibility that
Hmm.
we never, a lot of the artists in the industry didn't have before because there were all
Yeah.
these barriers, right? We couldn't do this
Yeah.
because of, but then when we were forced to do it, it was like, oh, all of a sudden all those barriers got pushed away really quickly.
Yeah, they really
Um,
did.
yeah, so I think that was huge.
Hmm.
We're seeing a lot more content that's being needed to be made since
Oh
people are
yeah.
right,
Yeah.
and animation, VFX, all game, like we can create this content remotely. So I
Yeah.
think like the speed and the the growth of the industry is growing.
Yeah.
And then I also think what I think an interesting trend is too, which people don't really talk about that much, is 3D and animation outside of the traditional like VFX, gaming, animation. Like we're starting to see 3D implemented in different ways, like in furniture rendering, like things like mass that you would never have thought about before.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Now our skill sets are translating into these other sectors that I think is really interesting because that opens us up in so many other ways, more like a mass market.
Yeah, it
Um,
does.
so, I mean, there's a lot of really interesting things going on.
There really is. And, you know, it was interesting because I was friends with Eric Miller of Miller Animation, and I actually did a project for them, partially because of California law, it was much more difficult for him to, you know, run a business. But also, you know, the pandemic hit around the same time. So I was right here sitting at this desk in my basement working on, you know, CG animated content for him, and it was really, really cool. And now currently with this project that I'm on, most of our team does work remotely, and once in a while we'll fly all of us in, we'll meet together, but a lot of the time, you know, it's mostly remote, and then there are a couple of us who come into the office. But yeah, it's really cool to see the differences and the benefits of both. And there definitely are things you lose by not being able to be person at least once in a while. But there are also things you gain by being remote, which is really cool.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I mean, there's
Yeah.
pros and cons, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think, yeah, we could all agree like creative collaboration is still a tough one sometimes, you know,
Hmm.
remotely. Just that energy.
Yeah. Oh, another application is NFTs. So
Oh,
along
yeah.
with our first episode at Space Station of A for Adley, the Pirate Island cartoon, which is doing so well right now, we launched a thing called Quarter Machine, which you put a quarter of an Ethereum in, and you mint an NFT from the Pirate Island collection, and yeah, it can accrue in value, and Space Station is doing a lot of things to infuse value into the NFTs, make them something that is. I think kind of a game changer for the NFT space, because sometimes the NFTs people are wondering where's the value, and
Mhm.
yeah, I think with Quarter Machine, with some things that we see come out, I can't say specifics right now, but there are going to be lots of things that show that NFTs are actually something where you can have a lot of value, and there are a lot of NFT projects raising a lot of money to make animation. So yeah, it's really exciting what the future holds.
I know
So
there's so many things. I mean, I didn't even touch on like, you know, the AR, VR, like all
yeah,
of the,
yeah.
it's like, yeah, whatever the
Yeah.
metaverse, yeah, all this stuff is happening.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think,
Burning Man was an event that people go to every year, right? And
yeah,
I think I could say this. I have a buddy at Microsoft. Hopefully I don't get in trouble because it already happened, right? So Burning Man was virtual during the pandemic, and it was Microsoft that my buddy and his team there that created that experience, you know, and it was cool that at least people could kind of get part of the experience through a virtual reality experience of
that's,
Burning Man, I guess.
I didn't know that Burning Man was virtual. That
Yeah,
must have been interesting.
yeah.
Huh. You'll look that up after we
I
get
don't even know
off.
how it went either. I never did the research because I've been busy. But yeah, it's like you said, there are all kinds of applications we've never thought of that we can use these skill sets. And I kind of think of my primary skill set as not even a technician; it's more of storytelling.
Mhm.
And you know, throughout history, there's always this huge boom of people trying to tell stories, and then the people who are really good at it who end up becoming the ones we know as classics like Shakespeare or Charlie Chaplin, or you know, who knows who's going to come out of this boom of YouTubers and social influencers and you know the artist economy. So yeah, it's really exciting to be a part of.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting. Yeah, and the storytelling is huge. Like, I mean, we're all storytellers, right? In
Yeah,
our own storytelling, our own life every day.
yeah,
Really, yeah, it's so
we are.
interesting.
Yeah, it's when we try that it gets hard. But when we're naturally interacting, you can hear like we get the story structure and all of this stuff. But
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, that's an awesome point. The other thing is that we should probably dive into is about remote work. I
Hmm.
mean, remote work isn't really just a walk in the park, right? Like some people are like, "Oh, I get to work from home, and I can be in my pajamas, and only my shirt." Actually, I am wearing pajama pants right now.
Are you really?
I was going to put jeans on, but I forgot.
Uh,
But yeah, so um, yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
what about remote? Well, like, yeah, I mean, I think what was interesting about remote work is, yeah, it's different for everyone.
Hmm.
And what became really apparent when everyone went remote is everyone's in different situations.
Yeah.
You know, a remote work for someone that lives alone is very different than remote for someone with like two young kids, which is my situation, not right now, but during the pandemic it was.
Yeah.
Um, so one, I think from like from my personal perspective, I love remote. I've always wanted to be. I had a very long commute,
Yeah.
and my time away from my young kids where it was very hard for me. So it was, for me, remote's like a gift, right? It's gonna be hard for me to go back if I ever. I don't know if I ever would, but like full
Yeah.
time back, I think the hybrid model is a very good model. But I think remote is depends on the personality really. Some people really embrace it, some
Hmm.
people, not. And the biggest thing with remote is managing your time. Like all
Yeah.
of a sudden, where I feel like that's one of the biggest things that
Yeah.
people often we never had to do that
Hmm.
before, right? We were in a
Yeah.
studio or a company 9 to, like, we knew that was it, 9 to 5, 9 to 9. It's whenever 9 to 5, but
Eight
um,
or something. Yeah.
but you're on it, and all of a sudden you kind of have this ability, this freedom, which is really nice. I think there was a bit of transition for that, but and then the isolation, I think it was huge. I think during the pandemic, they said the two groups that um, I don't want to say suffered the most, but like were most affected mentally were um, singles in their 20s
Hmm.
that lived by themselves,
Hmm.
because they lost all that social, and they became really isolated. It was like extreme opposites. And
Yeah.
then also, then the flip side were parents of young kids. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I got that one. But
Yeah, that's me too. Yeah.
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 So it's I think what's interesting about remote is it's all dependent on you and your personality. And I have friends that say they'll never go back in an office, and I have other friends that are back in office when no one is, because they like ran back to the office. So
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong. I think the best part about the remote, honestly, is it opened up the flexibility
Yeah.
for the personalities, right? You could
Yeah. Yeah.
choose now.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and also if you are an extroverted personality, you do need an environment to be with. Co-working spaces are an option.
Yeah.
And if you can't find a co-working space near you, that's what I did for actually near 4 to 5 years, somewhere in there. At first, I was helping another company build their creative division, and then I was doing my animation thing and trying to get my feature films off the ground, and nearly have. And who knows? I think it's very possible, still in the cards. So, um, but yeah, the day before I went and just met the people at Space Station, I told a friend I never want to work for anybody else again. And yet, when I saw what was going on there, I was like, yeah, I can't just not engage with this thing, you know. I've got to see what happens if I jump in and be a part of this. So, um, yeah, but that's a really great way of. It's also cool. Um, you get exposed to different ideas in a co-working space because there are people who are doing all types of stuff, right? There are people starting a business. There are people who work remotely for other companies. There are people who we had a kid who was playing the stock market and playing video games and Fortnite during the day, and slowly, like as he was exposed to different mindsets, became more and more responsible in his life, and has started to build really cool things himself. So yeah, it's
No,
a good option.
I agree with that. And then, like, to your point about, how you said you were never gonna do this
Yeah.
thing, and you like end up doing it the next. I mean, that speaks a lot to. I think it's really good. Like, it's opening, like keeping your mind open and not
Hmm.
like putting off. And I think, like, I know one of the things you want to talk about is like what happens when you get laid off, and
Yeah.
like looking for a job, like also thrown into something. And usually when you give someone that scenario, their mind just goes to like stress and like all the
Yeah.
negative around it.
Oh yeah, and you're actually thinking along the same lines. Although I was thinking about like I said, like the words I said and the thought read as I don't want to work for anybody else. What I was really saying and thinking was I love the excitement of being an entrepreneur, and I don't want to
Mhm.
give that up. And I actually didn't give that up working for space stations. So yeah,
But
so sometimes you have to listen to your thoughts like closer, like what's beneath that thought, and what feelings beneath that and that, you know. And yeah, like you said, that can take a toll when you're laid off. You can start to think like in black and white thinking, or you can start to catastrophize and think like I was unemployed for 18 months
mhm.
after my first job at Rhythm and Hughes, and I was interviewed at several companies, and I would say strung along. That was the word I used, but really it was that they were interested in me, but there were layoffs other places, and other places other people were a bit more qualified, and that sort of thing. So I just had to kind of get up every day, treat it like a day job, and work every day on animation and networking and improving my skills. And yeah,
Yeah. But I mean, what you just did, like in your current situation, what I love about it is you created your own career. Like you created your own
yeah,
rules, right?
yeah.
You knew that you wanted to keep the entrepreneurial side, and
Hmm.
then but then you were also given this other opportunity instead of like the black and white would have been like, oh, I have to give up one for the other,
Yeah.
but you didn't do that. You
Oh,
like,
it has been a struggle though. It's
I
like
know, of course,
you could,
I
because you're
yeah,
like, wait, if I like if I don't stay here, I might not get equity. But you know, like, there are all these things that kind of go through your head, but you do have to kind of start to sort those out.
yeah.
Thinking takes time. You know, you kind of have to slow down for a bit and really actually think and
That's the
sort
most.
through.
Yeah, it's so important. And I will say, when we all like, Blue Sky Studios 500 artists,
Yeah,
when we lost our jobs, like I think that was the most important thing that we could have that we did, or hopefully most of us did, is like just stop and think first, like
yeah,
before the panic. And what really helped is like I worked with some coworkers to uh to do exactly that, to like stop and think, and instead of going to panic mode, be like, what do you love? Like this is like an opportunity
yeah.
to like tap into something you really wanted to do, but it would have been too hard to leave this like full-time job, that
Hmm.
pays really well and provides all this, but now it's like this opportunity. So a lot of the artists I work, it's like they just stopped and we like went through and thought about, what are your priorities? Like, where do you want to be? Where do you want to work? And it was really great to see like all sign from like that panic of like lost feeling to be like really focused, like actually, I want to do this, or I've been really interested in gaming. This is my chance to go into gaming now or learn this. And I think that's what, like, if anyone's ever thrown into this kind of unexpected position,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly what you said. Stop, like, just stop and think and use it as an opportunity, especially as creatives,
Hmm.
where, honestly, working at the same job, like some of my coworkers, they're there for like 20 years. Like,
Wow. Yeah.
if you be honest with yourself, you probably creatively, like, not as inspired as you were when
Hmm.
you started day one. So,
Yeah.
how can you, like, to tap back into that and be inspired again is really inspiring. Like, it's really
And it's a
inspiring.
great opportunity too. Yeah, I've been talking to somebody who just broke up with their um, boyfriend, and she was so sad that she hurt him. You know, but this in this certain situation, it's like she gave that person every opportunity, like and gave them plenty of notice, and they thought through it and talked through it, and then it just ended up not being the right thing. And so I'm like, at that point, I don't think you hurt the person. I think you gave them a gift. It just depends on the perspective you look at it with, right? It could be a
Yeah.
gift. This is an opportunity to go meet new people and discover maybe somebody who's a better fit for me. Or you could say, oh, this is terrible. I've lost that person forever, And I think any situation can have any kind of big change where you're suddenly no longer with the familiar and you have to kind of discover new things could be a wonderful opportunity.
I agree. And I like this quote. There's a quote that's like, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% of how you react to it.
Yeah, I like
So
that.
it's exactly that. It's your perspective. And it's true. It's like in hindsight, usually, you know, if you look at in the moment, probably you're not very grateful for it. But then if you look at it from a different point of view, like for me, being like for Blue Sky closing, it's really sad. I still miss like all my coworkers, amazing people.
Yeah.
But on the positive spin, like I got to go back into VFX and realize the differences there. And as a result, like as part of the Academy of Animated Art, we're actually going to start a VFX program within the Academy of Animated Art. So that probably would never have happened, right? If I was still at Blue Sky. And like I've also started coaching more people with like creatives, and like that probably wouldn't have happened. So like in hindsight, it's like I'm helping so many more people because Blue Sky closed down. So it's like, okay, so you always like look at it from that light of exactly like different perspectives of it opens you up to other opportunities. And it just, you have to be open to it and look from a different light.
Awesome. So let's talk about your role as a job search warrior and a coach. So you often, you're probably trying to help a bunch of people, especially through the Academy of Art. And at the same time, I'm sure you start to see patterns of like, these are the things that the students do that help them get a job, like faster and better. And there's a difference between, you and some other people I've seen, how your transition was like hardly a transition. You just walked over to the other side of the street pretty much, and other people may have spent a few months,
Yeah.
And so what are the patterns of success that you see as you're coaching your various students and mentees?
Well, I think the biggest, like on a tactical side, yes, you need the work, you need a good portfolio. You need to have the skill set. And that's what, at the Academy of Animated Art, that's what we focus our students on, like how to train your eye and create that portfolio quickly in a good way. And then, so when you present yourself, you have all the pieces in place. So that's the first step, right? It's get the skills, have the portfolio. But the other thing is clarity, honestly. Like, so that's what, and you're speaking to it as like you take months, it's kind of like you need to stop and really think of what you want to go, like where you want to go. Because I know it's easy to say if you're like more of a senior, I guess, if you're starting out, but even if you're starting out, to be really clear on what you want and more importantly, what you don't want. Yeah. Because you go chasing jobs that you'll realize like probably too quickly if you ever take one of those jobs, you don't like it. You're like, what just happened? It's because you didn't stop for the clarity piece. Yeah. And also think of like your end goal in mind. Like we have a lot of students that their goal is to be like, I want to work on Disney film, or I want to work at Pixar, something, or Marvel, like some kind of film. And I was like, okay, that is amazing. That's amazing. That. So let's think about the steps to get you there. But then they'll get maybe a gaming, like something totally different, right? Like gaming or VFX or something. Well, VFX could translate, but gaming might be a little bit different. And if it skews them a little too far from where their ultimate goal is, then we have to think about it. Like you have to be like, okay, pros and cons. Yeah. And we see how it could lead to a different direction, which could be what they ultimately want. I mean, what they will. But you got to be aware of that instead of just like aimlessly like throwing out your resume everywhere.
Not even just that. Like you're speaking to the artist, right? You're speaking to many people. I'm going to CT next week, and this is my 12th year at CT Next. I think one of those was online, but but yeah, it's so many people come to my table and they'll be like, I'm a character designer, a lighter, a rigger, like they're all these different things, and I'm like, you got to pick one. and sometimes it's very tempting for me to do that for them. Like they show me their portfolio, I'm like, yeah, you really should be a rigger. That there's the most jobs available. It's or something like that. So yeah, I think artists just have kind of a hard time wanting to nail themselves down to one thing. They want to kind of do a little bit of everything, and
it's true. Like especially as a creative, like creatives have it's like because we can create so many things, right? Yeah, you're a rigger, you can do anime. You want to do it all. I'd say if you want to do it all, you should be a generalist in VFX or something. But
maybe.
That's Yeah, that's
Or work
what
at a
like
small boutique place.
yeah,
We actually
exactly.
have one at Space Station. He's amazing, and
Yeah.
but he also struggles like, where's my place? Where's my place? And
Mhm.
recently with the quarter machine stuff, he's really like, oh, just blossomed, and he's like our, we call him our special projects guy now. You know, like if there's a special project, give it to him because he likes to play in all the areas, and the rest of us can kind of help him get the quality where it needs to be, and it's really cool. So there
That
is a
is,
place. I'm not going to discourage that. There is a place for that.
no, there
Yeah,
definitely is. Like generalists are in demand in a lot of
yeah,
places,
yeah.
especially for like the small boutiques. Like you said, they want the generalist.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think like for anyone looking is first to gain that clarity, have your priorities in place, right? Like an easy priority list for me is um, location, type of work, right?
Hmm.
And also like intensity. Think about, I know, some studios work life balance is very different from another one. And
Yes.
you gotta put
Yes.
that into account too, right?
Hmm.
And now with remote and play, like that's another thing. Like now I have friends that say they won't talk to someone if it's not fully remote. And now like or some people want to be in person. So like put
Hmm.
that as your, if you know you're the person that wants full remote, then you can focus and hone your search in on
Yeah.
that. You don't spend time in another venue. If you know that you want to do feature animation and that's it and not anything else, then you can like be laser focused and not put your attention towards a gaming or VFX or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's the clarity, like the stop part. What do you want? And
Yes.
then go for it. And that's how you're going to get there. Because if you go wandering, like I'm just going to grab whatever I want, then you're kind of letting life happen to you. Like, oh, this, gaming company came to me, but I really wanted to do that, but I'm gonna take this one instead because it's here. Well, then 20 years down the line, you're in the gaming industry and you're wondering, oh, but I
How did
really
I end up
want to.
here? I wanted to do
Yeah,
other stuff. Yeah.
you have to intentionally design. It's
Yeah.
just like for the same way that you like a storyboard or previs. I often refer to it as previs.
Hmm.
Like you would never create a movie without previs, right?
Yeah.
Or like taking the time to stop and write the story and figure it out. Think about like we should all be prevising our lives, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it's like it's the most
I,
important thing.
an interesting thing is like half our team at Space Station came to Space Station through a layoff, right? Somewhere around half of them. Maybe not quite. Maybe it's like a fourth or third. But our producer, like Nathan Riddle, who I interviewed 2 shows ago, yeah, that was his situation. And he was in. The reason you reminded me is because he went to the, I think it was Art Academy in California, and got his
Mhm.
degree, and then ended up at a game company for 16 years. And he had imagined himself doing like film and this other stuff, but it never happened because he was at this one company. Luckily, he was there long enough to like really become ambitious and gain skills enough that, when people were looking, Space Station was looking for a producer, everybody's like, Nathan Riddle is an amazing person. He's an amazing leader. He'll be great. And yeah, and I love working with him. Like, if I could choose somebody to work with, he would be at the top of the list. So, yeah, and that shows like the resilience you can kind of build by working in the industry too.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, the more experience you can get, and if you can't get experience, you create your own experience.
Mhm.
Like I did during that unemployment period, right? But yeah, these are excellent points. Just great. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing them, and yeah. So topics wise, is there anything else you wanted to cover that I didn't bring up?
Hmm. I mean, I can talk about like, well, there's a lot of things in life to cover.
Oh
Um,
yeah. let's now go into psychology and
yeah, let's
here's how
not
to
go into.
cope, here's how to process your emotions,
Yeah,
right? But
we'd
we
be.
kind of touched on all those things, right? But a
I
lot of
think,
them, like every topic we brought up requires a deep dive. Even the art of focusing and like
yeah,
really deciding what you're going to do, there's a deep dive there. There are lots of conversations you can have about that. So
yeah. Okay,
yeah.
I do know one thing. So we've been talking about like stopping and gaining clarity.
Uh-huh.
Biggest thing, and I think this is hard for creatives too, as I find, is okay. We stop and we gain clarity, but then what happens next? And a
Ha.
lot of times nothing, right? So important to start, like to and especially as creatives, like a lot of us, I feel like are perfectionists. Like we want it to be perfect out of the
Yeah.
box. We don't want anyone to see anything messy, right?
Yeah.
But it's the opposite. Like the biggest thing is, like, I love to think about design thinking. It's like you have to start. You have to start somewhere. No, I like to say it's going to be messy from the first go.
Yeah.
Like get rid of all the pressure and you gotta start, and then it's all about testing and iterating. Like life is about testing and iterating. Like even, you know, you gotta apply somewhere, you gotta take a job somewhere or whatever. And but that's not it. Like once you get that job, don't stop there. Be like be really self-aware and look around. Like, is this a good fit? If it's not a good fit, let's keep on testing and iterating and not get stagnant, especially as creatives where, you know, you don't want that motivate, that creative energy to die down.
Yeah.
So never first start. That's the biggest thing I want to say.
Yeah.
You got to start. You got to do. You got to take action. I feel like a lot of people just don't take action, or they just, you know, they think it's good in theory, but then they're like, oh, it's scary. It's scary to take action.
It is.
Take that small step, and then always be aware of your, like, where you are, and if you're happy. If like you're just, I don't want to say settling's a horrible word, but like you like dream big. I always like encourage people to like dream bigger than they probably, because it's possible. If you want it to happen, you can create it.
Yeah,
so
it's true.
Keep on testing and iterating. So that's
what we're doing over here too.
I'm sure.
Oh, another thought I had as you were talking, learn communication skills as much as you can. I think that the more remote you are, the more communication skills are very, very important. And I think the key skills I would point to are positive communication, like communicating in a way that you're not like, what is this junk, you know, or whatever. Like you want to be positive. You want to point out to the things that are good and then make suggestions for the improvement, but never, I just don't like saying like, this looks like garbage, right? And then also follow up and asking, like, if you get a direction from a director or your CG lead or whoever, ask for clarification if you don't completely understand it. And I almost think you should, like, without fail, ask for clarification. I think some leaders might be bothered by that. But for me, it's like, oh, this person's really trying to wrap their head around the problem so that when they deliver the piece of art, it'll be closer to the goal that we're looking for. So
I completely agree. Like communication with remote is so much more key because you're not just right there, right? And it is hard for a lot of people because especially if you're reserved, a lot of I know a lot of artists specifically, you know, they chose that because they just want to be in front of the computer and not bothered. But you're so right. Like the art of communication is huge. And I feel
some good
like
resources for that would be like the book How to Win Friends and Influence People. Never Split the Difference is an amazing book. There's one that I'm supposed to read that a buddy's bought for me called The Art of Moving People or something like that. I'll tell you when I read it. But there's tons of resources out there that you can practice. I think Chris Voss, also the Never Split the Difference guy, has a masterclass. You can actually watch him using his negotiation skills and stuff. So yeah, there's all kinds of resources out there.
Yeah, I agree. Like in communication, not only for, I mean, you mentioned it kind of, but like not only for the artist to lead, but the lead, like the super, like that, their communication is super key.
Oh, I know.
Like,
and also your listening is super key. Like when I read a couple weeks ago, there was somebody who made a comment on I'd animated the monkey logo at the beginning of our space station stuff. And somebody gave me feedback, and I had to read it like over and over and over again. And I was still like, I don't understand what this person's saying. But finally, I realized that they were giving me like this much information, hoping that I would see this one little detail. And so once I saw that little detail, then I got it, right? Yeah. But I mean, can you imagine, like, if I was a high in negative emotion, like how frustrated I could have been as a leader, right? Like, I could have maybe not have even looked for the note. So yeah, the clarity of communication too is just very, very key.
That is key. Yeah, my co-founder wrote an email about concise, right? Really concise, like notes and emails to like the point. So you don't miss it in that one line, right?
Yeah.
There's so many aspects. I think, remote has forced us to kind of like prioritize different aspects, or we should be prioritizing different aspects. I don't know if we have gotten there yet to be like, oh yeah, that's gonna be it. Maybe
Yeah.
after listening to this, I'll be like, oh yeah, I need to invest in communication a little bit better.
I think it'll be just like you learned a bunch moving from, the VFX to Blue Sky for 10 years and then back to VFX. Like they're going to be all these little hidden gems of knowledge that you're going to get as you transition to each new role and try each new thing. And I think that that's something we miss sight of too. I think that happiness is like too much emphasized in our society, when actually purpose is so much more important, because happiness is often a byproduct of that, right? And and clarity of purpose. Like when you have that, then you're learning things and you're developing it, and you don't have to think, I'll be happy when. Like I'll be happy once I've got that Disney animation job. Like actually, funny story, I don't even know if I've ever told this, but I actually did get a possibility working at Disney after I realized I wanted to do my own thing, right? That my passion was building my own business and doing my own feature film independently and engaging with Space Station and all that stuff. It was like that's when the opportunity came, and then it was like, wow, I've learned so much through these other things that I wish I could go back to myself and say, don't think that much about Disney. It's cool to shoot for a high quality, but there are other things in your future that are even more rewarding for you as a specific person.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we all evolve and change, and and like I don't even remember what my goal was in my 20s, but I feel like if my goal was the same, two things would have been either like I was way laser focused on it. I mean, I was like super in tune with myself in my 20s, which was probably not the case. Or like I didn't open up myself enough to explore, honestly, if it was the same thing. Because you're right, like whatever you wanted back then has probably changed now. And I totally agree about the being happy. I think life is about like creating meaning, like creating a life of meaning for yourself.
Yeah.
Like, and that speaks to your purpose, right?
Yeah. It emerges from your purpose. Because
Exactly.
your purpose is like your vehicle. Okay, I'm going to choose this vehicle to drive through life with. And maybe the vehicle gets a little old, so you have to get a new vehicle, but it's still like you're still focusing on that purpose. It's not like you're like, okay, I'm just going to go drive every car possible, for the rest of my life. Like after you do that test driving process, then you do have to focus on one vehicle for a certain amount of years, and then maybe it switches slightly, but you learn things from driving around in that vehicle. And yeah,
it's true. It's like, how do you find that purpose and create meaning and that whole fulfillment thing, and constantly grow. I think growth, like you said, is so important.
Now here's another thing that's interesting. I think if you wait too long, you might be able to stew. I've met people who stew about their purpose for like years, right? Well, you do have to choose one. Like there might be a really cool car out there that you might get a better deal on and everything like that, but or really cool opportunity that you're like, well, maybe I'm made for this other thing, but choose one that like is close and that you can reach at least, and then maybe you'll discover something after that. But without using what you have at your disposal, you'll never, if you're that small town person, you'll never get to the city unless you have a car. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that speaks to like taking action, right? Like, you can think forever, but if you don't take action, that's all it's going to be. It's never going to happen. But it's the taking action and the small steps. I'm a huge believer. I used to joke that you can change your life 10 minutes at a time. If you just like dedicate like, okay, for 10 minutes, I'm going to do this. And then that's how you get started, like step by step. And then before you know it, it will grow into, your life, I guess.
Yeah.
But if you ever want to do something, just say, can I dedicate 10 minutes right now to it? And just start. Like, don't overthink it.
Yeah. And I think the thing that stops people is fear.
Yeah.
Fear perhaps of not being good enough, right? Or life not being good enough. Those are the two main fear categories, right?
Yeah.
And but I think fear only slows you down. It only gets in the way of you having your purpose and finding that meaning and, engaging with life in a dynamic way. So, yeah, I think one of the my next guest is going to be Shonduras. who was a YouTube Snapchat celebrity and has now built this really super inspiring business called the Space Station. And it's one of those things, like the brand of the Space Station is you kind of see little glimpses of cool things they're doing. But when you come to the Space Station, it's like, what? Like, what's going on here? It's an amazing experience. And, you know, I've watched and I've wondered how he does this. Part of it is it's not all him, right? There's lots of people who work at the Space Station. The other part is that he's just going and engaging with whatever's fun. Gary Vaynerchuk called him a professional fun haver, right? But his fun is actually really hard work, is what it looks like. So, yeah, he's just like, hey, what's the next opportunity? He never thought he would be creating an animation studio, and yet, as the A for Adley channel was growing, and his daughter was also going to go to school, it's like, okay, now what do we do? She's not going to be able to film as many videos, but we still need content. Well, what about animation? You know? And from that, like the quarter machine and NFT thing happened, and that's been super inspiring, and it's really making waves. So yeah.
I mean, that actually reminds me, I just listened to something, I think it's Gabby Bernstein. She said, lean into the fun. Yeah. So she just lean into, like, don't think about how you're going to make money or anything. Just like go towards what you find fun, lean into the fun, and then inspiration and things will happen. And that's how you find your purpose, find your meaning, and just like overall fulfillment and happiness. Just lean into the fun. That's all you need to do. So that kind of reminded me of like, him leaning into the fun and like animation studios, like, oh, how did that happen? Because things happen as you just go towards what you love and not overthink it, not have to think about, oh, I should be a rigger because there's more job opportunities. Like, actually, do I like rigging? Like things. Do I
like the technical plus the art? You know? Yeah.
Of course, there's like a practical side to it, but ultimately, if you lean into what you find fun, you'll always be like creatively inspired and going to something you want. And
you can also start to enjoy things you never thought you'd enjoy, too, which has been a bunch of surprises I've had. The other thing I was going to talk about that I thought of as you were talking is that anxiety and excitement are the same process in your brain. They're the same chemical reaction, but what happens is when that emotion happens, your thoughts, your thinking side, categorizes it, right? And so sometimes you might be feeling anxiety, but it's really just a new experience. And maybe you can lean into that, and then it actually will be fun, right? Like it's excitement. You can kind of start to listen to your thoughts and start to see, hey, this is just a new experience. I'm going to learn and grow from this. This is awesome. Let's lean into it, you know? So
it's true. And that's how you grow. I mean, many people say, you hear many people say when they get that feeling of like almost fear, it's like fear, like excitement, they know they're going in the right direction. They're pushing themselves. They're challenging themselves outside of their box, right? Outside of their.
And someday that fear, once you realize you're safe, your body's not in danger, like nothing's in danger, you're safe. That fear can actually become the excitement, which is why a lot of people go bungee jumping and extreme sporting and all this stuff. So, yeah.
I was like, my mind went like, I am not going bungee jumping, but yes.
Me either. Yeah, my wife wants to go, and I'm like, nah, not for me.
I'll be over here on the ground.
Yeah, I do enough things that activate my fear and become excitement. So we'll just go there. We'll just.
I'm with you on that.
We'll just pitch animated films and stuff. Yeah, but maybe I should. Maybe I should do it.
I mean,
face the fear. But yeah, and that's the kind of fear that you're like, your body's like borderline in danger, right? So maybe it is a little wiser to stay away from it. Who knows?
Well, that's all personality, right? It's like my fear. Yeah, I personally fear away from the physical fear factor to the more internal fear. I'll embrace that more. Yeah. Like, oh, I could die.
That's possible. The rope could snap, and I could.
That's where my fear went. I would say I was like, I'm gonna totally do it. I'm like, my bungee jumping. I always think about my neck being like whipped. Anyway.
Oh yeah, that's interesting.
I just
now that's what I'll think about. Thanks a lot.
Okay, sorry everyone that just heard that random tangent. But yeah, let's get back.
Yeah, actually, we're near the end here, and Now, when I first had you on the show, we did the Get Wiser moment, and the question back then was, if my goal, what role does a filmmaker and storyteller have to the world culture? And generally, all of my guests would give the answer, truth, 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 truth. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of what I already knew. So I rephrased the question as, if my goal is to get the highest clarity of truth into a story, what approach would you recommend? And I think we've actually been touching on this, like highest clarity. You've been saying clarity. We've been talking about focus. We've been talking about leaning into the fun. We've been talking about having new experiences and living a life, having purpose and finding meaning. Like, that sounds like a search for truth, if I've ever heard of one.
Huge. And then I would just add, like, don't be afraid to fail. And actually failing is a good thing in many ways, right? Yeah. Failing leads to a lot of success. So
yeah.
I mean, that speaks to the fear, right? Kind of like, embrace it.
Yeah. That's actually kind of my approach to writing too. Like, I'll take a belief I have, right? And they say that you should prove your belief through the course of the story, right? The problem with that I see is that, back in Nazi Germany, they believed the Jews were evil. So they were making propaganda about the Jews were evil, right? So I actually try to set myself up when I'm writing a story for that belief to be challenged. And you've got to have, like, if your belief represents the hero, you've got to have the villain like as strong as they possibly can be, so that your beliefs can be tested and possibly fail, and and that sort of thing. And I think you can discover truth through that process of not being afraid of that, not being afraid to explore and be the protagonist.
I love that. I like that. Yeah. I like that's how your approach is. Yeah. It's good to see. Yeah. A little bit of the following, and then the lead kind of is human.
Yeah, like the process of Inside Out when they were making that film, right? They discovered the theme as they went to that film, and it's deeply resonant because of it, because it was surprising to them. It's surprising to the audience. Yeah. And I think that really, like, just to say with life, right? We go into a film, we go into writing a storytelling with one thing in mind. And often we come out with something completely, not what we expected, but it evolves. You learn as you go. And it's the same thing with your life, right? You go in with this kind of perfect plan, and all of a sudden you get all these hiccups, but it evolves into something even better usually. Yeah. Yeah, I think the world needs artists who are brave, because the stories that are being told right now are very propagandistic. You could look at both sides of the political aisle and just say, what do we do? But I think what we do is we are willing to be wrong. We're willing to fail. We're willing to try new things, and willing to tell stories that can make the world a better place, I think. So, yeah, thank you so much for being on here, Jasmine. If people want to follow you and connect with you, where's the best place?
It's a good question. I mean, you can find me at the Academy of Animated Art, where I am the co-founder. That's academyofanimatedart.com.
Yep.
You can also find me through, the creativity coaching on, I guess the best place would be Instagram at Jasmine Katat. And I'm around. You can find me on LinkedIn. Jasmine Katatikarn. No one else has my name. That's the one thing that's good about my long name.
There are a couple Scott Weisers. There's one who's a lawyer. We fight for the top spot on SEO on Google. But I'm sure he's a good guy. Yeah. Hey, Scott, if you're watching this. But thanks a bunch for being on the show. And until next time, I hope we all get a little wiser. Thank you for watching the Directing Animation Livecast, hosted by Scott Weiser. Audio version edited by Kiera Horowitz. Copyright Scott Weiser LLC 2021.